Hey, my name is Kara. I'm an ultrasound tech, and let's talk today about finding ovaries with ultrasound. Now, this video is going to be more geared towards those who are ultrasound students or those who are new to scanning, as I'm sure those of us who are more experienced have picked up some tips and tricks along the way to be able to unobscure those ovaries. But with having ovaries that are difficult to find or are obscured by overlying gas, this is a issue that I remember struggling with when I was a student and also when I was a new scanner. For those of you that do not know, the ovaries are quite mobile, so they're not always going to be in the same spot in the female pelvis. So when you are doing either a transabdominal scan or an internal scan, you are sweeping these adnexas like crazy sometimes, but you are still not seeing them. But this is because there is a lot of bowel in that area as well as a lot of overlying gas. So even if you are in the right area of where the ovary is, sometimes you still cannot see it because of that overlying bowel or gas. Now, in school, they did teach us to go ahead and ask the patient to push down on either the right or left adnexa, whichever one you are having difficulties with in seeing the ovary, and hopefully then the gas or the bowel will get out of the way, and then you can have a more clear look at the ovaries. In my experience, though, that has never really worked for me. I have asked patients to do this, and I feel like it doesn't really make a difference. Plus, it can be really confusing as well to the patient as to what they are supposed to do. And what I have found, though, that is much more effective is if you ask the patient to take a big breath in. This usually ends up doing two things. Number one, it does end up getting the ovaries to come down a little bit if they are high up in the adnexa. And number two, any sort of overlying bowel or gas, that again is usually obscuring the ovary, that does tend to kind of push it out of the way with that big breath in. Now, no matter how much you try those sometimes, you still cannot get the ovary, and that is okay. If you are using an adequate amount of pressure and you are using the technique of getting the patient to take a big breath in, and you are really sweeping that adnexa as far up as you can go, as well as far down as you can go, and also checking by the uterus, because sometimes ovaries like to hide there, but you still cannot see the ovary, you are simply just going to write not well seen on the tech sheet. But something that has always helped me come to peace with this when I can't find an ovary is if there was a mass or something that was overtly wrong with that ovary, we probably would have been able to see it because it would have been large and very, very obvious compared to if it was just a normal ovary that is being obscured by bowel or gas. Then it is not going to be seen in some circumstances just because we can't get those structures to move from over top of the ovary. It's also important to note that since the ovaries are so mobile, sometimes they are just so high up that we cannot physically angle the transducer with an internal scan up high enough to be able to see the ovary. And a lot of the time you can actually tell this when you are doing a transabdominal scan and you see the ovary hanging out way higher than what the uterus is. Then in your head you can kind of think, okay, well, I'm probably not going to be able to get this with the internal scan, and then you just take a few extra pictures transabdominally in case you are correct. Also, be sure to keep in mind that in women that are postmenopausal, the ovaries are going to be less in volume, as in they are going to be smaller and harder to find in general, than those who are not postmenopausal. So if you are unable to find ovaries on someone who is older and has been in menopause or basically postmenopause for a while, that is also quite normal. Or you may find them hiding somewhere in the adnexa in a place where you didn't really look initially because you thought, oh, that can't be an ovary. But then the more you look, the more you realize, oh, there is a little bit of a calcified something on the ovary, and that's what made me see it, etc. So anywho, I hope this video has been informative for those of you who have been struggling with finding ovaries on patients. And just know that, like with everything else in ultrasound, just because you have been scanning for a long time or just because you have built up the confidence to be able to find ovaries, that doesn't mean that you are going to find them on every single case. And for those of you who are students or who are new learners, I swear it gets easier with practice. Just make sure to try and use these tips and tricks that I have stated in the video here, and hopefully they are helpful for you. Happy scanning!